You know, this season really did start off on a slower note, but I think things are starting to pick up a little bit more now that everybody's like officially merged together. Well, kind of, sort of. But still, the same people keep on standing out just a little bit more amongst the rest, and I still can't ignore that either. There is going to be a lot to cover with episode 8 today, but of course, I'm going to ask if you would all please hit that subscribe button before we get started. Also, if you could give this video a like, I would really appreciate that as well, as it does help it do better with the algorithm. And now that all the housekeeping is out of the way, let's get started. So this episode is going to open up with everybody coming back to camp after they just voted Nate out, and Savannah, Rizzo, and Sophie are all at the bottom now, and they are all in serious trouble, and they definitely know it too. So we're going to see each of them sort of do damage control, and they're each going to try their own little tactics in order to save their games. We see Sophie out there trying to repair her relationship with Steven, and I also heard Rizzo say something about maybe being willing to flip sides and work with Sage and Jawan moving forward instead. And of course, Savannah is just out there acting fake nice and doing all the little fake smiling and all that, just trying to preserve her game the best she can too. But this is where Savannah's edit just starts to get a little bit tricky to me, because we see her out there just kind of acting fake towards everybody, which, don't get me wrong, I think is totally fine in a game like this, nothing wrong with that. But we're also hearing Jawan call her Savannah the Savage, and we're also hearing Sage just refer to her as a mean girl over and over again. And hearing stuff like this is where I start to think that maybe Savannah's edit is just going downhill a little bit, because normally Survivor doesn't tend to cast their winners in like more of a negative or villainous light. Like, yes, even if they are out there doing sneaky things, normally they'll get more of like a mastermind edit to go along with it, just to make them look better overall. So because of all of that, I was already a little bit suspicious about Savannah, despite everything that we've been shown about her so far. But then we get this seemingly random personal segment of her talking about how she was basically bullied in her old workplace, which of course it's a really sad story, and I'm sure a really shitty feeling and all of that. But overall, I think it's stuff like this that actually kind of helps her edit in the long run to me. I just think that overall stuff like this makes her a more sympathetic character, even if she is getting this villainous edit. And the show is also just like going completely out of their way to humanize her here, because really this scene wasn't necessary to like the main part of the storyline. In the end, this may all end up meaning nothing, but it's just little things like this that I like to notice and point out to y'all. So meanwhile, back at camp, we see that a bunch of people decide to go out and go idol hunting together, which honestly has always kind of weirded me out, just because I've always felt like an idol is something that I would want to keep a secret for as long as possible, or at least until I'm like ready and had some plans to use it with my allies, you know? But as we're gonna see, Kristina ends up finding one here, which, hey, go off, good for her. But the bad part is she does find this in front of a group of people, which I could just easily see this all being risky for her later on. I mean, we already hear Alex out there talking about possibly using it against her, or using it to expose her somehow in the future. So just all bad news there. I mean, yeah, sure, there is still a chance that she could use it more as a defensive thing like Rizzo's doing. But honestly, I just don't know if Kristina is that game savvy to be able to know to do all that yet, you know? In general, just watching that whole scene made me wonder if there was like any possible way she could have been more subtle about it. Like maybe coming back later to that same spot and finding the idol, or just being like a little bit more sneaky where she grabbed it, or waiting until nobody was looking. I don't know, but I'm really just hoping that it doesn't come back to bite her later. So later on in the episode, we see the players all go out for their next immunity challenge. And if you've been watching my channel, y'all already know that I'm instantly upset because for whatever reason, Jeff decides to give us yet another tribe split. Can somebody please out there tell me why? Like seriously, why? What is the purpose of taking half these players and pretty much just removing them from the game completely, like just temporarily? What is that doing for anybody? Like, don't get me wrong, I do kind of get having two separate teams and maybe just giving one of them immunity, but still having everybody vote together. Sure, why not? But I don't know, to me, it seems like putting them on two separate beaches and taking away half of the people's votes seems more like a punishment and not a reward. Like, seriously, the winners here having no say in who goes home at all whatsoever is not the flex they think it is. And then even on top of that, when you add up all of the tribe swaps and switches that we've had this season so far, it really just makes all this look unnecessary. Anyways, as we see, in the end, it all ends up coming down to Savannah versus Sophie, and we just see Sophie out there really struggling, having a hard time standing on that little ledge. Meanwhile, Savannah is just out there smiling and chilling and honestly acting pretty cocky, and eventually she's able to pull out the win.
That is a long time.
What's the record?
Savannah's so confident, she's asking about records.
You're good. You're gonna break the record, Sophie. Let's go.
It seems to annoy Sophie.
Not only that, but she also wins an advantage here, which is pretty much just the ability to attend that tribal and get an extra vote, which again, honestly, to me, just really is not the best advantage since, you know, being able to go to tribal and make a vote is like the most basic aspect of the game in general. But still, you know, good for Savannah because she was probably going to be in a lot of trouble on that side if she didn't win immunity. So there's that. In the end, the losing team ends up being Sophie, Jawan, Sage, Rizzo, and MC. And, you know, on the surface, Rizzo would really be the odd one out here since everybody else had just grouped up and was able to come together for the last vote. But he does still have that idol that is just throwing everything off. And we're just going to see a lot of stuff happen after this. First, we're going to see Sophie try to get Jawan to be the backup target just in case that idol does get used. And at this point, it just looks like all hell breaks loose after this, and it's really just a bunch of gossip and he said, she said, and loose lips and all that, which I really don't get where anybody's real loyalty stands over on the side for real, because to me, Sophie didn't even have to tell anybody about her decoy vote, and MC didn't have to go and spill any of that to Jawan, and then they didn't have to go back and bring all that back to Sophie either. I mean, it really just seems like nobody actually really likes or trusts each other over here on this side because nothing is like actually getting done. It looks like everybody's just out there pretty much snitching on everybody, and then here comes Savannah's ass just here to cause even more chaos and shake things up even more. And of course, they all think that Savannah has to use her extra vote tonight, so now we see her and Rizzo out there planning on getting MC out just because they think that she's like more of a hidden threat on that other side with like way more connections. Whereas they're seeing Sophie as just more of an obvious target, which sure, I guess, fine. I mean, it's kind of hard from my perspective as an audience member, but if Sophie really is looked at as like the biggest threat, then sure, I think that was a good move. And even though all of this is going on, there does still seem to be like this underlying desire to get Rizzo out right now. But again, with him having an idol, I think everybody's just like scared and uneasy to really make that move. Which, I gotta be honest, I'll give him his credit. I'm surprised he's been able to hold on to it for this long. This tribal council ends up going live randomly, which was just such a surprise to me. We have not seen this all season. And honestly, I'm blanking if we even had a live tribal in 48. I can't remember. If we did, let me know in the comments. MC ends up kicking everything off. But as we see, for whatever reason, the show just did not give us any subtitles or like any information as to what was actually said. So honestly, we just don't know what was going on. I feel like they usually don't do that with live tribals, so that was kind of weird. But hey, maybe we'll get some more insight as to everything in the next episode. I don't know. We'll see. But regardless of what MC said, it obviously had no effect on the votes anyway, because as we see, when the votes are read, MC is ultimately voted out here. Savannah did not use her extra vote, and so that may still be a secret, and Rizzo also did not use his idol, so he still has that even though he honestly really shouldn't. And the three people who were in the most danger coming into this episode end up being like completely, totally safe. Wow. I just kind of think it's crazy how Rizzo still has not gotten any votes yet, besides being like just so there and so obvious. And I really don't know if that is a credit to his social game or him just not being taken too seriously as a big threat right now. And even though he's on 50, right now, I just don't see as much of a winner's edit for him as I do for Savannah. But he is growing on me, I will say. Speaking of which, Savannah just continues to be a tricky person to read for me because all of the strategic content is there. there's just a lot more negative stuff than Survivor usually shows us for winners, you know? She is definitely still on my list though, probably at the top, don't get me wrong, as well as Sophie. Even though she didn't really have as much strategic content in this episode, I really just think it was because she didn't have to go to Tribal, so she really just wasn't as relevant, you know? Overall, thankfully, the season is starting to pick up a little bit more in the second half. It's still a little slow though, definitely not the best of this new era by any means, but we still have a little bit more to go, so I shall see. That's pretty much all I have for today, but of course I want to know what are your winner picks. If you have any, please drop them in the comments below. Sophie and Savannah have been at the top of my list pretty much since the very beginning, and I really don't see that changing anytime soon, so there's that. But other than them, I do still really have my eye on Steven. He's just more of my underdog pick, you know? Of course, I will be back here next week to recap this next episode with you all, but until then, bye.